Hello, thank you for tuning into the NAESP Principal Podcast. I'm Donna McGuire, the proud assistant principal of the Park Terrace School in New York City, and the moderator for NAESP's Assistant Principal Community of Practice. I will be your host for this episode. We're going to have a discussion with assistant principals on ways our roles as APs can best address students and their families to reduce student absenteeism. Our roles can have an impact on improving student attendance, which in turn affects their overall academic experience and performance. Our guests will be focusing on the importance of tackling student absenteeism and how relationships, outreach, and creating more opportunities can play a role in decreasing chronic absenteeism. I am so excited to introduce you to our esteemed guests. Our first guest is Dr. Sonia Matthew. Sonia is an assistant principal at the Mary B. Neal Elementary School, which is located in Waldorf, Maryland. And many people may know Dr. Matthew as a dedicated assistant principal. However, they may not realize that Sonia immigrated from Canada and landed her first teaching position in Texas before heading over to Maryland to continue her educational journey as a teacher and now school leader. And our second guest is Demetria Alston, an assistant principal at the Wilder Elementary School in Westerville, Ohio. A fun fact about Demetria was that she has been on the Oprah Winfrey Show not once, but twice. Sonia, Demetria, thank you for taking the time to be our special guest.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Thank you, Donna. It's great to be here with you all.
Great. Let's talk about a topic that is affecting many schools across the country, student absenteeism. We all know student attendance can be impacted by many factors, such as difficulties at home, disengagement with instruction, or simply underestimating the importance of attendance. In your mind, what are the most challenging contributors to student absenteeism, and how do you try to address those challenges? Demetria, why don't you start?
Sure. I think that in my building, what I've seen from my experience are really two main factors that relate to why we are seeing so much with chronic absenteeism. One of them, I think, is the disengagement between teachers and students. So I've seen that many students who enjoy coming to school have teachers who are really engaged in positive relationships with them. Those are the students that make it a point, and those families make it a point to have those students come to school every day. They really enjoy learning. And so when the students that are struggling with attendance, they typically are having struggles in their relationships with their teachers, and they don't really enjoy coming to school. So I think looking at what is the relationship between the student and the teacher is one area that could be improved. The other is also some misconceptions around the importance of attendance and why that's really a big factor in student performance. So some students can just, will just tell their parents they don't feel like coming today. And surprisingly, many parents will just say, okay, yeah, it's fine. You can take a day off here or there. But then those days start to add up. And then that can really have a big impact on students. There's an article by NAESP about breaking down barriers to student attendance. And it mentions four really important characteristics of what causes that chronic absenteeism. And so they mentioned the disengagement and the misconceptions, but also other barriers like trauma or lack of transportation or aversion to disciplinary practices or school climate. One of the other things that I think has an impact is that I don't really see any real penalties for the chronic absenteeism. As a school, we try to provide lots of supports for parents to help them. But then if those aren't working, there really isn't a penalty. There's not, a retention necessarily after so many days or some other consequences that might in turn try to get students to come to school more and families to also be a part of having students attend more regularly.
Thank you, Demetria. I'm glad you mentioned some factors we should look out for as it affects student attendance. Sonia, what are your thoughts on some of the more challenging contributors to student absenteeism?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today with you both, Donna and Demetria. So I think about just really as an adult who went through schools, right? As a child of immigrant parents, I always think about the root. What is it that is a barrier to that family when it comes to what's challenging the family in a way that they're not really sending their children to school. So are they understanding the long-term impact of the absenteeism? And so in that, what is that root cause? And so that to me would be one of the main challenging contributors. So it's important for us to really establish that trust with our families, meet them where they are, and really try to figure out through empathy. And it goes back to really how my family was, coming up. They kind of relied on the school system, and if I didn't go to school, that was okay. They really didn't understand. So I found myself absent quite a bit because I could kind of use that to my advantage. But I think it's important for us as school leaders to work alongside families and seek to understand what those challenging contributors actually are for each of those families.
Sonia, thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your personal childhood experience, because as now a school leader, you can reflect back on that and relate to what is happening in maybe your students' households.
Yeah.
In your mind, what kind of policies for student absenteeism are helpful and productive versus unhelpful or unproductive? And Demetria, let's begin with you.
Sure. So I think there might be some things that vary from state to state. I think for speaking for where I am, some of the things that we do with involving supports at the school level with the counselor and reaching out to community resources, I think those are effective. I think that the focus on engaging families and family engagement, that is impactful as well. And I think that we see a lot of times that the families who are engaged and coming to events or engaging with their teachers and really being involved, those again are the students who that I alluded to earlier. They enjoy coming to school. Their families enjoy being a part of the school community. And so those are the kids that are always showing up, and we don't see those types of issues with them. So I think it's helpful when we focus on, the things that we see that are working. And so making sure that we are keeping families engaged, we're working with community partners as well. And I think also making sure that we are promoting a positive school climate so that students have that sense of belonging and they feel that they belong at the school and they make those relationships with the teachers and other students as well so that they want to continue coming to school.
Thank you, Demetria. You know, what you pointed out about student belonging and family belonging is so important. Not just the student belonging, but the families that they made the right choice, that they entrust in us every day. And they want to encourage their children to be part of it because they want to be part of it. So that's great.
Mhm.
Sonia, can you share your thoughts on policies you think are either helpful or unproductive as it relates to student absenteeism?
Yeah, I go back to addressing root causes. I think that policies, we have to understand that absenteeism is often a symptom of other problems and that those problems need to be addressed. And so I love what Demetria was saying about collaboration, both in school as well as within the schools, but also outside the schools with community stakeholders, community organizations that can help to bring in those resources through wraparound services. And in that, thinking about the tiered system of support, making sure that we're implementing increasing levels of intervention based on each of those different needs of the students and their families. So I think the policies need to ensure that we're, number one, collaborative, focusing on prevention and intervention, and making sure that, again, we really focus on those root causes so we know what it is that our families need to support our scholars.
Thank you, Sonia. Both of you mentioned the community aspect and partnerships. And if you think about it, in every community, the school is the center, it's the hub where all families meet. And we have to remember that we're not working in a vacuum, but we're in the hub of every community. And if we partner with everyone in the community, families and other, we'll have a stronger, more successful approach to this. Now, switching gears, Sonia, what role does data play in your school's tracking of student absenteeism? How helpful is data in helping you address this issue?
Yeah, so I spoke about the tiered systems of support. In order for us to understand what those barriers are, we have to look at the data, and we have to look at it continually and consistently. It's important to look at a wide array of data. So we can look at the output, right? We can look at the fact that these students are not coming to school. But what are some of those other data points, such as what Demetria was also providing with regards to the classroom data? So the student work, looking at just their levels of engagement, the school and culture climate surveys that we do. So there's a lot of different types of data that we can look at, but the key is, Donna, I believe, is making sure that we're being intentional about our work with that data, in observing it, analyzing it, making sure we understand what the patterns, the themes, what is the story that all of these data sets are telling us, with the ultimate goal of understanding who is not present in school and what are those barriers. So it's really being intentional with those with a variety of different data sets.
Thank you, Sonia, for your thoughts. What you're saying about data, making it intentional, applying it, hearing the stories, and merging and crossing over the two is so important, because those patterns, those trends are what's going to do it for us. Demetria, can you please share your viewpoint on this topic?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that is important to kind of keep in mind is that, when we are looking at our MTSS system, so the multi-tiered systems of support, that doesn't just include the academics and behavior, but we look at social emotional learning as well. And so the data that we get from things like our panorama surveys, or information from parent surveys, that goes right into play with when we're looking at the attendance data and then the academic data. So when we have attendance meetings on kids who are chronically absent, we look at the whole picture of the student to say, okay, even if academics might be okay, we have some of this other very important data from, like panorama. Does this student feel like they have a sense of belonging? And then from parent surveys, how engaged is the family? So we can start to pull some very meaningful information when we look at students specifically, to see where the areas that they are lacking, and then how we can build that support in. So the data is very important.
Thank you, Demetria. Again, we appreciate hearing from APs around the nation on important strategies we can use to help raise student attendance. Sonia, what do you see as a system principal's role in supporting strong family engagement?
Yeah, the first word that comes to my mind is really being a liaison. We act as those liaisons between the family and the school, helping to really bridge any communication gap. So making sure that our communication is clear, consistent, effective between the school and family. So that's really important, but also that we are the leaders of collaboration with the teachers, the families, and other community stakeholders so that we can address those student needs and definitely promote their academic and social emotional growth. Making sure also that, of course, addressing any concerns along the way, resolving issues fairly, making sure that we're efficient in those regards. So I do see the assistant principal as a key player in creating a collaborative partnership between the school and families, which is ultimately going to benefit our students and their success.
Thank you, Sonia. Demetria, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, I think that some of the other aspects of the role that we have as an assistant principal would be one, just making sure that we're helping to create that welcoming environment in school culture so that it's inclusive and respectful of all cultures so that kids feel seen and heard. And even parents, when they come or when they call and visit, I think that it's important to be present and approachable. So, attending the events and performances and conferences and letting families see you, that's a great way to build that connection with families. I think also um, offering, multiple ways for families to participate. We have a wide range of family availability. So, some parents who work mornings or some parents who work nights. And so finding ways that, even if when parents sometimes really want to take part in some things, but their schedules just don't allow, what are some other ways that they can still be engaged? So sometimes that calls for a little bit of creative thinking, but finding, lots of different ways that families can participate so they all can feel like they're included. And and then I would say just making sure that you are celebrating and sharing successes. A lot of feedback that I've gotten from parents is that when we acknowledge, the contributions from families, when we acknowledge, students and when it's just an atmosphere where we're celebrating and sharing, that just goes to strengthen that family engagement bond.
That is wonderful, Demetria. Thank you for sharing your views with us. Recently in the news, I was reading about a mother who was reaching out to the schools because she wanted to attend her children's events, but all the events were happening during the school day. And she said, but a lot of us work.
Mhm.
So the fact that you're mentioning have it at different times is very important because when the child doesn't see their family, they may think one thing when, they're there by themselves, but the parents are working hard to provide. And so
Mhm.
we have to do something either on the weekend, the early afternoon or evening, and have multiple entry points, just like we would do in a classroom, right, Demetria?
Right. Yeah. We've had to do that on, several occasions where we're recognizing students academically. We'll have some things that happen during the daytime, but then we make sure, maybe in the fall, something is during the day, and then maybe later in the winter, we do something that's in the evening. So just giving lots of different opportunities. Even now, everybody has been getting so used to using Zoom and Google Meet after going through COVID. So some of the programs might need to be streamed that way so that parents can access it if they aren't able to attend in person.
That's
So,
a great idea.
yeah, we've gotten a little creative, but again, with the goal of just trying to make sure everybody feels like they are a part and welcome, and we're including them.
Well, this has been an insightful podcast. I want to thank you, Sonia and Demetria, for joining us and sharing your perspective on student absenteeism and the role that system principal can play to increase attendance for individual students that are chronically absent, as well as improve the overall student, school, and attendance data. I'm sure our audience will find your tips and advice very helpful. And again, thank you for joining us on this episode of the NAESP Principal Podcast.